Even if you're not keeping a pulse on the real estate industry, you still might be aware of the buzz around real estate agents' compensations. So let's unpack the current developments surrounding the National Association of Realtors, or NAR, settlement as of today, April 4th, 2024. My goal with this video is to break it all down into simpler terms as I understand them, discuss the potential impact on our industry and what it could mean for you, the buyers and sellers. Please bear in mind this settlement awaits court approval and may still be influenced by Department of Justice. If the settlement is approved, these changes will take place in July 2024. We at Compass are ready to adopt and adapt to these changes, believing they promote transparency and benefit our community and our clients. In fact, and I will talk about this in detail later, we in Washington, D.C. metro area are very familiar with many of these proposed changes and have had some of them in place since at least 2016. So, first, let's address some common misconceptions by examining the lawsuit. At its heart, this lawsuit and settlements are about making things more clear and transparent about buyer and seller's agent compensation. Traditionally, and when I say traditionally, I do mean for at least 50 years, if not all 100 since the NAR was founded, sellers pay their agents who split it with the buyer's agents and also with their brokerages. You may ask why. It doesn't seem to be the most intuitive or even fair way to do it. Well, it was done like that because buyers, especially first-time buyers, often stretch their financing to pay a down payment and all the fees and taxes associated with the purchase. So this system came about to be as a way of giving a break to the buyers and then have them pay when they sell their home. So that's how it was done. So at the core of this lawsuit is that some sellers don't know or didn't know they could negotiate what to offer to a buyer's agent or even not to offer any compensation at all. So this settlement is about making that choice clear and allowing the sellers to decide if they want to compensate the buyer's agent, and if they do, how much should that be? Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about what major changes are going to happen if the settlement is approved. So, first major big change is going to be that the listing agents will not be able to put in the MLS whether the seller will pay the buyer's agent commission or not. So the idea is that this will prevent the listings being penalized or being overlooked, if you will, if they don't offer buyer's agent compensations. But there is a big caveat here. Buyers and their agents can inquire directly about this commission. And also the brokerages, the websites of all brokerages can list this info on their website. So as a side note, to me, it's interesting to see how the big home search engines will go about it. Right now, they get all this information about the commissions from the MLS, but once it's not posted there, will they just decide not to have this info? Or maybe they will start syndicating the website of every brokerage that there is in their local area. We don't know. We'll have to see how this works out. Two, although the settlement doesn't impose any restrictions on what the sellers can pay the buyer's agents, the listing agents now need to make sure from the start that their compensation and the buyer compensation are not set by law and they are negotiable. By the way, this has always been the case. In a real estate transaction, everything is negotiable. Well, I guess not everything. Taxes are not. The third big change is that buyer's agents now have to sign a buyer's agency agreement before they go to see the first property. And agents need to make sure the buyers understand they will shoulder the compensation if the sellers don't offer one. We'll talk about this specific item a little bit later in more details. But the DMV area is ahead of the curve because we have had to sign buyer agency agreements since 2016, as I already mentioned. Our listing agreements already include the amount the listing agent and buyer agent will get. Now, though, when an agent goes to a listing discussion, they negotiate their commission and then we'll discuss the pros and cons of offering the buyer's agent a commission, and they will let the seller decide how they want to proceed. Now, with this out of the way, let's talk about all the pros and cons for sellers and buyers. Let's start with the sellers. The benefits for the sellers is pretty clear, right? If they choose not to offer any compensation to the buyer's agent, then that money bolsters their bottom line. What's not to like if you're a seller?
It's possible that with time, we may see a shift where buyers pay their agent and sellers pay theirs. It definitely makes a lot of sense. However, until that becomes the standard, many sellers might still cover the buyer's agent commission. Why? Some sellers may believe this gives them an advantage. It could draw more potential buyers, some of whom might not be able to pay agent fees themselves. Or they can even see it as paying it forward, as they likely benefited from a similar arrangement when they purchased their home. Now, let's consider the implications if you, as a seller, choose not to offer buyer's agent compensation. Could your home attract fewer showings? Buyers probably will favor properties where the seller pays the agent fees. Might your home linger on the market for longer, even as others in a neighborhood sell faster? If you're forced to reduce the price, how significant might that drop be in percentage terms? Weigh those potential outcomes against the cost of offering a buyer's agent commission from the start. Ask yourself which strategy benefits you most, because this decision could substantially impact your sales success and speed.
Let's talk about the buyer side of this equation now. Because we have had a buyer representation law in place in the DMV area for over a decade, most buyers understand why being represented is a huge advantage. The agent has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure they negotiate the best deals for their buyer. But now there is a good chance that this representation will mean they will have to pay for it as opposed to the seller paying for it. Some buyers will be able to pay out of the pocket, but many will not because housing affordability is a huge problem. But buyers still have options. Although some sellers will decide not to offer any compensation, others still will because they will see it as a huge advantage to sell their homes faster, for more, and bring more qualified buyers. But even for the ones that don't, it doesn't mean that the buyers can't try to make it part of their contract or their offer or negotiate a seller concession and then fold it into the loan. So if the settlement is approved, and this will be the new law of the land, I am also sure that the mortgage and lending industries will make some changes to give buyers more options. This is where we are right now in terms of what options buyers have if they have to pay this compensation. So the last thing I wanted to discuss, which can have a big and direct implications for sellers and for buyers, is the representation. Legal representation is a topic that will I will make another in-depth video on, because it's super important, especially with these new changes coming out, and could be difficult to understand at times. But for today's purpose, I will keep it simple. Let's say that the seller has decided not to compensate the buyer's agent, and the buyer who wants to make an offer is unrepresented, which means they don't have an agent. So what happens now? There are really only a few options here, and we're going to talk about the most obvious one, which is that the seller's agent will become a dual agent, and they will represent both parties in this transaction. The small problem here is that when an agent represents both party, they don't actually represent fully neither party. In a way, they start representing the actual transaction, meaning they're facilitating the negotiations and keeping the transactions going to its natural conclusion. But they cannot give advice or their opinions or ideas on how to proceed to either party, just facilitate. From experience, I know that a lot of sellers and buyers too, by the way, don't want that, because at the end of the day, both parties are dealing with the biggest investments of their lives. And they want to get our advice so they can make the best choices for themselves. Dual agency can be messy. So make sure you know the details before agreeing to it, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Phew! This one was a doozy, I know, but it had to be talked about. And I really wanted to make sure that all my clients or anybody who watches this video got some clarity on this issue. As I mentioned at the beginning, this settlement still must be approved. And as of right now, nothing has changed, legally speaking. However, a lot of brokerages and agents are choosing to start implementing some of all of these rules or changes just because they do bring clarity to the transaction. Change is always a bit daunting, but it's also an opportunity to elevate standards and improve transparency and ensure every client feels supported throughout the transaction. So, whether you're buying or selling, remember that knowledge is power. Do your homework before you buy or sell the biggest asset of your lifetime. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this information helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more updates on the real estate world.